and this was Easter Sunday. The first actions the government did, the tangible actions, were declare a state of emergency, which is kind of understandable in these circumstances, and ban social media. Now, there's been a global narrative building about how some social media platforms spread hate and misinformation, and how engineers coding the algorithms are unwilling to address the problem. So when the government imposed this ban, there was a kind of general wave of approval from many sides, from the New York Times and others, that yes, of course, Facebook was irresponsible, needed to be contained. These attacks, which were against the Christian community, which are a minority in Sri Lanka, were possibly the acts of Islamic extremists, and there was a Muslim community and they needed protection. It was kind of a slightly confused reason we're approving of this message, but they did approve. And of course, this is the reason why this is Myanmar. And Myanmar is a kind of different case, but it really fed into the narrative of Sri Lanka, and I've heard so often now that Sri Lanka and Myanmar are the same, which I'll come into in a minute. They're not. The local language in social media in Sinhala and Tamil is very different. It's very divided, and it reflects the ethnic tension and mistrust expressed in mainstream media. So again, even within social media, there are two types of social media. There's the English social media, which is overall more progressive and can speak to a kind of younger pan-national audience, and then there's the kind of linguistically divided social media, which can be excellent and can be terrible, the same as content everywhere. Kind of understandable that Sri Lankan government shut down social media for around 9 days after the Easter attacks, ostensibly to stop hate speech in the wake of these attacks. But firstly, it didn't really work. The hate messages still spread via text messages, VPNs, and it also became quite clear that social media was the least of it. There were massive intelligence failures that led to the attacks. There was a breakdown in communications between the Office of the President and the Prime Minister, unsurprising, given that the President had tried to oust the Prime Minister about 6 months earlier. There were lots of questions that people had that just weren't being answered. And also, just look at the results. If you say that you shut down Facebook to stop Muslim sentiment spreading around the country, well, there's been a whole spate of anti-Muslim riots and a huge groundswell of anti-Muslim sentiment in the wake of the attacks. There have been internet blackouts, but they've been accompanied by curfews and mob violence that I remember really well from all the years in Sri Lanka. Again, this is not new. There's also been a state of emergency that hasn't been lifted, giving the police quite sweeping powers to detain people. And the attacks have not stopped, and there's really no sense that the rule of law in the country is getting worse. It's getting a lot better. No sense that the rule of law is getting better at all. It's getting worse. And then I'm going to unpick this case. This is, I'm going to say his name. I'm not very from Sri Lanka, but I still can't say his name properly. It's Dr. Saigu Shihabuddin Muhammad Shafi, and he's a doctor in Kurunegala Hospital in the west of the country. And his story shows both why social media may need regulating, but why it also can't be done from isolation in the mainstream media. In late May, a Sinhala language newspaper published a story that a doctor with links to the radical Muslim group, the National Tawhid Jamaat, who are accused of coordinating the Easter Sunday attacks, had, again, sterilised 4,000 Sinhalese women, and that police were investigating, and the sterilisation was meant to have happened at this hospital. A university professor, a Sinhala university professor at the hospital, posted the story on Facebook, tagging Dr. Shafi, not quite accusing him. The link was a little tenuous. It was kind of a slightly complimentary link, but the comments underneath that Facebook page were really vicious against him. The police, in the meantime, issued a statement that they were not aware of any of this. They were not investigating. They had no clue, no evidence of any kind of forced sterilisation. But the next day, Dr. Shafi was arrested, not for sterilisation, but for amassing undeclared assets under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. His colleagues spoke out for him, but he was still in custody. His wife, who was also a doctor, is at the hospital, and his 3 children have gone into hiding. And when tracked down, the quote I had from her, which said, which I didn't get, the Sri Lankan media got, which is, "I don't know what the future will hold for my family. I don't think things will go back to normal and fall back into place, even if my husband is proved innocent. The media has killed us." And for those of you who don't know, this is Galgagatne Nanasera, and he's head of a hardline Buddhist group called Buddha Bala Sena, or the Buddhist Power Force. He has close links with Rathu, the extremist monk in Myanmar, who's been vocal in attacking the Rohingya community there. He had been jailed in August 2016 for contempt of court when he interrupted a court hearing about the abduction of a journalist, Prageeth Eknaligoda, who was a critic of the government, who went missing in 2010. He was also in this slide. Prageeth was mainly a cartoonist. He depicted issues of media freedom, political power, social disadvantage. He was a well-known critic of Rajapaksa. Rajapaksa looks like he might well be in power soon. You'll understand why I think social media is only a very, very small part of the problem in Sri Lanka, and why blocking it is going to create a whole set of problems that we can't even begin to anticipate. And I'm going to end just with this. And this is a slide that I took from a lecture given by Rasmus Nielsen, who's now the director of the Institute, who's then head of research. He gave a lecture here in this room last year about platform power, and he argued that large tech companies have hard power, soft power, and, as listed here, platform power. And the platform power is power to set standards, power to make or break connections, power of automated action at scale, power of secrecy, power that operates across domains. And I remember thinking at the time, gosh, what an amazing set of powers. Wouldn't any authoritarian government love to have this? And what I really feel is that what's happening in Sri Lanka is in trying to attack the platforms and dismantle the space that social media provides for criticism and dissent. They're trying to seize these powers from platforms. And as an international community, we just need to be aware of the fact that this is happening when we kind of talk about regulation and where this fits into the narrative.
News Hub, peopleizing the news.